Okay, so this video is really to kind of look at what you should have read by now, looking at the idea of policy positions. So this basic framework, there's nothing special about it. It's just one way of evaluating policy positions. So what we're going to do is go through the form, kind of look at the definitions, and then I'm just going to do a simple analysis of two different policy positions with respect to GMO labeling, just to give you an idea of how to use this format. Okay, so again, this is pretty much straight from the book. We've got policy position at the top, and you can tell from the arrows and the boxes how things are supposed to influence each other. So let's just go through the definitions first. I'm just going to read them off. They're from the book, so I'm not going to put them on the board or anything. So we start out with the policy position. So the policy position indicates a conclusion as to what the role of government ought to be with respect to a particular problem or a set of circumstances. So again, you're going to have different policy positions with respect to certain issues. So from there, we'll just go down to the bottom. So we have facts. Facts are something that is known with certainty. Ultimately, everyone has to agree on what the facts are. The facts will not vary with the policy position. Next are beliefs. Beliefs describe what people think is reality. So the issue is what people think is reality. So this could be a mental conviction, acceptance, confidence, or faith that a proposition is true. So in kind of sorting out the information underlying a policy position, a lot of people might think that something that they believe is a fact, but unless everyone agrees to it, it would remain a belief. Okay? Next, we have values. Values are a conception of what should be. So this is an image of what is good and right, specifies that some things are better than others. Okay? And then finally, the goals. Goals are the desired ultimate end results or objectives. The purpose toward which an endeavor is directed. It's long-term in nature. Okay, so all we've done so far is simply kind of define these boxes as they appear in the text. So let's kind of look at these arrows. So first of all, again, if we look at the policy positions are particular. And the whole objective of this kind of structure is to try and explain how do people come to a particular policy position? How do the beliefs, values, goals, and facts influence that policy position? And again, what's key to notice is that the policy position does not influence anything else. It is influenced by the other things. Okay, so if we look at beliefs and values must be consistent with facts. Okay? You can't truly have a value that is internally inconsistent with the facts. Okay? So again, just kind of, some people don't accept some facts as facts. So you can have, let's say, a scientific fact, but if someone doesn't believe that fact, it would not rely in the fact box, it would come into that beliefs box. Okay, so let's see again. So facts influence beliefs and values. Beliefs and values influence each other. Values will change a little less than beliefs. I would say that beliefs are more likely to change more quickly than values, but still beliefs can influence values, values can influence beliefs. But again, beliefs are going to probably change a little more since they're a little more particular than values, I think, again, if you think about the definitions. Finally, goals are broad in nature, especially when compared to the policy position. And we'll see this as we go through the examples. And goals will be influenced, so the goals will be influenced by the beliefs and values. In fact, beliefs and values are broader, less particular than the goals are. And hopefully that will become clear. So let's go through an example. We'll look at the idea of the policy of labeling of GMOs in foods and products. So we'll start out with one policy position. The policy position is that if foods contain GMOs, then they should be required to be labeled as such. Okay, so that's the policy position, because it indicates a conclusion as to what the goal, what the role of government ought to be with respect to a particular problem or set of circumstances. What should the government do? The government should label GMOs in food. Okay, so we'll start out with the facts. So the facts I'm going to lay out should not depend on the particular policy position. So we can say the facts are GMOs involve the insertion of foreign genes, that is genes not from the same plant or animal itself, through a purposeful and technological procedure. Another fact, GMOs are currently in many plants and many products that are produced. GMOs are currently being consumed. Not all consumers know that they are consuming GMO foods. Okay, so these are things that, regardless of your position, they're accepted as facts. Okay, so let's look at the beliefs of someone who believes that the government should label GMO foods. A belief, and remember, a belief describes what people think is reality. So someone supporting the labeling of GMO foods could say their beliefs are GMOs can harm people. Okay? They could believe that many companies are more interested in ensuring the continued sale of GMO seeds and products than in the overall safety of the public. So again, that's a belief. It's not necessarily a fact. There exists an inherent bias in agencies regulating GMOs. That's USDA and FDA, because many of the regulators have come from the companies that produce or use GMOs. Lastly, a belief might be the less processed the food is, the better it is for you. Again, a belief, not necessarily a fact. If we look at the values of someone supporting labeling of GMOs, the values, again, a conception of what should be. People have an inherent right to know what is contained in their foods and how the food is produced. So that's an idea of what people should expect. Another one, consumer choice is fundamental to consumer satisfaction. In areas of risk, the government should take a more cautious approach to introducing foods. This is the idea of the precautionary principle. And then finally, food should be wholesome and be considered differently from other consumer products. So again, those are values. Finally, we could say a goal of the people wanting to support the policy position of labeling of GMO foods. The goal might be safe food. Okay, very broad in nature, not unique to this idea of GMOs. Let's look at a different policy position. Let's look at the policy position that if foods contain GMOs, then producers should not be required to label them as such. So I'm not going to repeat the facts, because the facts that we mentioned before are also the facts of the anti-labeling position. So let's look at the beliefs. So again, we want to think about how the beliefs might be different. So the beliefs of this position would be GMOs have had years of research and consumption and therefore should be considered safe to eat. That is not necessarily a fact, but a belief. Another one, corporations producing GMO products should have the best interest of consumers in mind, and science should trump opinion or choice. Again, another possible belief. Another belief is consumers have existing options to avoid consuming GMOs. Again, that's not necessarily something that a pro-labeling person would believe. Another belief would be consumers are too easily confused by labeling information. So again, these beliefs will inform the goals and potentially influence values. The values, we have two here. The values of the anti-labeling are consumer choice is fundamental to consumer satisfaction, which I mentioned before in the other position. So you can have values that are common, but not necessarily result in the same policy position. Another value is the market is more efficient than government regulation in providing consumers what they want. Again, that's quite different from a belief, or a value of the pro-label. And then finally, if we look at the goals, one goal of the anti-labeling is that markets with less government control can feed the world. Okay? So that's the basic idea of how you might break down information of two different policy positions using this structure. And again, it was simply to kind of show how the different definitions help sort out that information. So one thing you might want to do is consider a different policy position, something that you might have great familiarity with, and see if you can break down the information into the various boxes and using the definitions kind of explain policy position.